CWPA Remote Professional Edition, where we take a look at water polo players and where they are today.
This woman was a member of the Boston University Women's Collegiate Club water polo team from 2008 to 2011. After graduating with a degree in marine science, she embarked on a 6-year journey to get her PhD from the University of Connecticut, where she also played collegiate club water polo. Since then, she has founded a fantastic worldwide initiative to marry the average citizen with professional scientists. I'm so very pleased to be joined today by Sarah McAnulty. Sarah, thanks so much for agreeing to chat today on CWPA Remote.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for having me.
So let's begin at the start of your career at BU. How did you end up choosing to go to Boston University?
You know, I was looking for a university in a city that had a water polo team and that did marine science. I was hoping to be on the coast and hopefully somewhere that wasn't too horribly far away from Philadelphia, and so was at least within driving distance of home. And so from there, I applied to BU, loved my time at BU, and loved my time on the water polo team there as well.
So do you remember your very first practice?
I remember being just like, first of all, so excited to not just be a lap swimmer anymore, because I loved swimming. I was a butterflyer in high school, and I had always wished we had a water polo team in Philly. And at the time, back in '07, when I graduated from high school, we didn't. And so I was excited to like play a team with a sport. And I remember being so worried that I just like would not be able to like handle a ball or like do any of the sort of outside of just like cardiovascular exercise that I'd been done up to that point. I was just excited to be part of a team working together toward a goal.
And in that first practice, how did you handle the ball?
Horribly, very poorly. But you know, I got the hang of it eventually.
And what about your first game? You remember that?
I was definitely terrified. I'm generally more of a lover, not a fighter. I remember being so nervous that I complimented the girl's nails, who her nails were like on my shoulder, of course, guarding me. And I was like, "Oh, cute nails." And then she was like, "What?" I was like, "I'm sorry." And so I was nervous, but I fell in love with water polo during college for sure.
And what about your first goal?
Oh man, so my first goal was during a scrimmage when the guys team and the girls team played together, and our coach Conrad threw the ball to me, and I just like tapped it, slapped it right in, and it was I will never forget it.
And what about your single best memory of your 4 years on the water polo team? Do you have one?
So many. I have to pick one that.
Well, you can pick a couple. There are 3. It doesn't matter. We're here to find out about you.
I mean, I just loved our coach Conrad so much, and all of the girls on the team did. And so he would always show up to practice in jeans and a white T-shirt like every single day. So we all put on blue jeans, cuffed at the bottom, and a white T-shirt. We all dressed like him one day. That was really fun. And I don't know, just like partying together with the team. And going to tournaments at Middlebury is where we would often go, and Yale were like the 2 hosts every year. And the Middlebury pool is so gorgeous. And so I loved with all the natural light in that pool. And then Yale's pool, in stark contrast, is like this, it reminds me of like the Harry Potter Quidditch pitch. It's like the pool is in the center, and then there's just like straight up walls of seating. It's very, very old school in this like stone building and like the old school Ivy League looking gym. And so I just loved spending the weekends with my team in these beautiful places playing water polo.
Any disappointments along the way that you remember?
I mean, I was not a very good water polo player my first couple of years. I was just like along for the ride. So I didn't go in with particularly huge expectations. But I when we lost, it was all right. And when we won, it was fantastic. And so,
So as a kind of wrap up, I'd be interested in how you reflect on your water polo career at BU.
That's a good question. I mean, I think, so I really like didn't know what to expect going into playing water polo. At the beginning, I was like, I'm really not sure if like I have enough aggression in me to play this sport. And by the time I left BU, I like was hooked forever. After I left BU, I lived in Germany for a brief spell, and I played with this men's team over there. It was in Dresden. So it was just like a tough bunch of dudes who didn't view water polo as a sport for women. And so I just like hopped in and joined with them. And I think being on the team in BU just like gave me the confidence to be like, you know what, like I'm going to, even if it's intimidating, I'm going to jump in there and keep playing.
Well, why don't we just chat very briefly? I mean, we're talking more about your collegiate experience, but I'm interested in the Dresden experience. How did you end up there? Why? And then how about a little more detail about these men that didn't want you in the water?
Yeah, so I mean, some of them were so kind. So I just looked up Wasserball, so water polo in Dresden. I found the website for the team. I didn't see anything about a women's team, but I naively was like, well, I'm sure I'm just like not clicking the right link. Maybe I'm not reading this right. So I just showed up on training night, and all the guys were there in their Speedos in the room at the whiteboard. And so at the time, my German was god awful. I had just moved to Germany. I had like high school German, but that's about it. And so I like in broken German asked like, well, where's the women's team? And they were like, well, there isn't a women's team. And I was like, oh, okay. And one of them just like slapped me on the back and was like, well, I guess you're going to have to play with us. And the other guys, some of them were very fine with that, and others rolled their eyes a bit more in that prospect. But yeah, I hopped on the team with them, and it was really fun. Very challenging to hear your teammates over the splashing water in a language that you're not great at, but it was fun. I'm glad I did it.
And what took you to Germany?
Good question. So I graduated from college. I had neither boyfriend nor dog. So I figured, let's go somewhere before we start grad school and get really serious. And so I applied to a bunch of laboratory positions over in Germany. I had studied marine science as an undergraduate, and in graduate school studied molecular and cell biology. So sort of different kind of levels in terms of zoomed in on biology. Like marine science was more ecosystems and fisheries, and graduate school was like, cells and molecules. And I just didn't have that molecule experience. So I took a job in Germany working with cells. And so that's how I kind of got my CV filled out. And in the meantime, I just had a lot of fun living in another country.
Well, before we get into your current endeavor, I am curious about 6 years at UConn. So take us through that.
Yeah, so we had a club team there. I love the UConn water polo team. I coached them for a semester as well. As their coach, I brought them to their first win ever. So that was probably my most memorable water polo memory of all time, getting that team of a ragtag group of kids, most of which had never played water polo before college, getting them to beat a team was at Boston University. Actually, it was where that game took place. Was so amazing. I really loved my time with them, teaching kids how to play water polo, just like I learned how to play water polo at college. I played with them for 6 years during graduate school.
So you had a 10-year collegiate water polo career.
Yeah, longer than most in the CWPA for sure. Yeah, I feel like I really got to know those refs by the time I was done. Yeah.
Well, before we go on, I do want one question about this Skype of Science scientist. How did it come to be?
Yeah, it was, there was a lot of energy in the scientific community, just kind of realizing that as time goes on, there was less and less trust in science. And we didn't, with this like anti-vaxxing movement, people being afraid of GMOs in their food, a lot of stuff that really puzzled a lot of scientists. And so there was a lot of energy in the community, but like people didn't really know what to do with it. Maybe they didn't have quite enough time to start their own program. And so I wanted to harness all of that energy and put it towards something good. And so I developed Skype of Scientist, which allows scientists to sign up and be part of our database. And then we match them up with classrooms, scout troops, any group of people, regardless of age, to talk about science. And so if you have a kid at home during the pandemic that is really into sharks, we can match you up with a shark scientist and have a conversation there. And we really want to bridge the gap between scientists and everybody else. We want to make science as accessible and friendly and welcoming as possible.
And what are some of the great outreaches that you've accomplished with this so far?
I mean, we get stories in every day. So like, just to give you a sense of the scale of this program, in 2020 alone, we've matched 11,000 groups with scientists. So I really don't even know what's happening in a lot of these sessions because I'm not there for all of that. It would be impossible for me to be there for 11,000 sessions. But I mean, I know we've had students that write to us and write to their scientists as well after the session and say, you know, I've never seen a scientist that looks like me before. So like, for example, when I was at BU, I didn't have a professor in marine science that was even a woman until my senior year when she was hired. And so it was all men up until then. And, you know, I'm a white woman, that multiply that by 1,000 for all the other folks that may not see representations of themselves in science. And so we really want to help bridge that gap. And yeah, we get a lot of really heartwarming stuff happening through those kinds of connections.
So take us through from beginning of here I am, I'm you know, a leader of a group and we're interested in X piece of science, you know, knowledge. What do I do?
All right, so you go to skypeofscientist.com, you sign up, you tell us what type of scientist that you're interested in. Maybe you have like a vague sense of what you want. Like you want to talk to a chemist. Or maybe you're like, I really want to talk specifically about like fungus in frogs or something. We have a tool that you can use to browse all of our available scientists. And so you can type in frogs, you can type in fungus, chemistry, whatever, and then you can specifically request a scientist by name. From there, in about a week, usually less, you get a match email from us saying, congratulations, you've been matched. Here's the contact information for your scientist. And then from there, you and the scientist pick a time to meet and chat. Usually you do a tech check first. If you're a classroom, the scientist may give you some stuff ahead of time, maybe a blog post or a YouTube video, so that your students can prepare a little bit before the session. And from there, it's really a conversation. We want people to feel as though they're being heard as much as they're being talked at when they're interacting with a scientist.
So how long do these sessions last?
Usually like 30 to 45 minutes.
Okay, and how do you keep track of 11,000 interviews? How does that happen?
Good question. So using a database, I'm very lucky to have a best friend who does computer science. And so he actually went to BU for grad school. So we're all kind of circling in the same universities. Certainly not an athlete. He was a choir person, but he wrote a database and an algorithm for us to match everybody up. And yeah, that's how that all works.
Well, where do you expect the project to go from here?
We hope to continue building like more functionality into the program. We hope more people sign up. We can certainly scale with the way the program is developed, but we want to offer more support for scientists to do science communication in their own communities. During the pandemic, we can't really do that as much. I mean, we can certainly communicate online, and we have been, but we want post-pandemic to give people basically like protocols for having a trivia event at a bar, having a game night in a park for your local community, helping them figure out how to make connections to community leaders in their community, and sort of break out of our science bubbles.
Have you run into any unexpected roadblocks?
Oh, I think one thing that I didn't necessarily expect when I was starting and running the program, we partnered up with this group at the American Association for the Advancement of Science. They specifically work on communicating science to religious communities, to faith-based communities. And I know that some people perceive science and religion to be at odds, but they're really not. They can certainly coexist happily and healthily. And so we asked our scientists if they'd be willing to speak, for example, with a Catholic school or a Baptist school in the South. We asked our scientists, like, if you're not comfortable, like, what are your thoughts there? And so a lot of scientists were like really, really nervous to speak with religious schools. And so didn't see that coming. Maybe I should have. And so we're helping connect scientists with resources to kind of hop over that hurdle.
So, obviously there's been an interesting, scenario in terms of belief in scientists and all that over the last few years. Yeah. Appears that there's a paradigm shift coming with that regard. How do you see your role evolving?
We're really hoping that via these personal connections, we can build trust. That's really what it all comes down to. Like, where people go for their information is really dependent on who they trust. So whereas maybe 30 years ago, people would listen to the CDC, listen to their doctors, listen to scientists, now they may have lost that faith, partially for good reason and partially we don't really know why. And so people are going to people who they know they can trust. And often that's their family and their friends. And so they're looking for their information on health and food and wellness and everything on social media because they think that that's where their friends and family are, the people they can trust. And so that's sort of where this all started. And now we've snowballed into this bizarre situation where people are going on Instagram to decide what to eat, how to exercise, whether to take a vaccine, et cetera. And so we're hoping to build trust back up from the ground via a lot of personal connections. And so helping to build the scientists' kind of skill set for doing that effectively, because no one scientist can fix this problem. It's too big. And so we need many, many, many scientists and representatives of science sort of fixing this problem together. And so I'm hoping to rally the scientific community to fix this problem one person at a time.
That's a great approach and good luck with that. So we've talked about your collegiate career. 10 years, that's a heck of a collegiate career, all spent in the CWPA. And we talked about your current career a bit, but can you speak about how you feel your collegiate water polo career has impacted your working career?
I think in particular coaching the water polo team briefly at UConn has been a great experience in like getting people motivated, getting people working together as a group, learning how to keep a group accountable. That was a really, really valuable lesson and trial and error to get that really gelling and working effectively. Because now in my career, rallying people is totally what I do. And managing a group as my organization grows, I'll be managing more and more people. And so I think the teamwork that comes from being on a team and managing a team, both as a member and as a leader, is a really, really valuable skill that I'm glad I had.
Well, have you ever found yourself in your current situation or the development of this current situation with Skype of Science, where you stopped and said, I can draw this, whatever this is, from my college water polo and be able to deal with this situation?
I think being able to think on your feet, in a water polo game, things are changing constantly. You need to be able to problem solve very quickly to get the ball to your teammate in the net. And I think like the need to strategically pivot and be very aware of the situation at all times and keep a lot of balls in the air, no pun intended, is something that I'm absolutely using every day here. I'm constantly juggling a lot of things as the leader of an organization. And so kind of keeping your wits about you in the pool and as a leader of a program is applicable for sure.
Well, that's excellent. And we all have our different approaches from what we learn. And that's certainly a great lesson that you've taken from your collegiate career. So there's a question that a lot of people in your position get asked, and it's in many positions you're a position of success and development, and so interviewers often ask, what would you tell your younger self? But I'm going to go the reverse route. I want to know what your collegiate self would tell you today.
Ooh, what would college Sarah tell 31-year-old Sarah? What a good question. Probably to eat more legumes. I was a vegetarian in college, and I'm not a vegetarian now. I mean, I don't eat a ton of meat now, but I ate none then. Use more beans in my cooking again. That's a really silly thing to say, but that's probably my answer.
That's okay. It's all real. So finally, we have current high school players that are looking at college, their parents, and current college players watching today. What piece of advice would you give them about college water polo and a postgraduate career?
Ooh, good question. I would just say, really, when you join a team, really commit to those relationships, because you don't know how useful those relationships will be going forward in your life. You of course are going to make connections that are useful in your academic spaces, but those water polo friendships and bonds that you get over the course of being in a team is just so valuable going forward. And also, really commit to being on the team. Be a team builder, not someone that takes away from the group. Always go to practice, not just because it's the right thing to do, because it makes your team more fun. And just having a tight group that really is committed to showing up and working together it just makes it better. So that's what I would recommend.
Well, that's great advice. And she followed up her college club career at both Boston University and University of Connecticut by creating a worldwide initiative to marry the average citizen with professional scientists. Sarah McAnulty has been my guest today on CWPA Remote. Sarah, thanks so much for agreeing to appear today and share your insights about how your collegiate water polo career has impacted your working career.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
It was a pleasure. And until next time on CWPA Remote, this is George Gross Jr. wishing all our viewers the very best in and out of the pool.